Welcome to Laguna Podcast, an attempt at illustrating the lives and stories from the Texas outdoors. Today, I don't exactly sit down with a Texan name, but nonetheless, he's a friend of the podcast and has made quite a name for himself chasing giant bonefish in Florida. This is my conversation with Honson Lau. Again, if you say something you wish you didn't say, let me know. I'll go and post, I'll remove it, or I'll bleep it. So there's nothing that you can be like truly held accountable for. At the end of the day, it's just a conversation.
No regrets, man. No regrets.
Well, and let's just get it started. Or do you have any questions?
No questions.
Cool. All right.
Get going.
Okay. Yep. All right. Well, you're not from Texas, but we're here anyways, which is still awesome. I've wanted to do this for a long time. You and I have been friends for quite a while, for about 5.5, 6 years. And definitely, I will get into that too. But would you like to introduce yourself?
I'm Captain Honson Lau, and I'd say about 9 out of 10 of my clients are from Texas.
Okay, so that's a plus. We'll take that.
There we go.
Would you like to give a little background before we get into the questions, or do you want me to start from the very beginning?
No, I'll give a little background. I'm just a fishing guide here in Miami, Florida. Mm-hmm. Guide in Biscayne Bay, the Everglades National Park, and in Islamorada.
Yeah.
You know, I've competed in tarpon tournaments, bonefish tournaments, a little bit of everything. I grew up fishing. I grew up, hunting and just in the outdoors.
And you've done pretty good at the bonefish tournaments too, huh?
I've done pretty good, I'd say. We've won 3 in a row now. The fall fly in 2023, the spring fly in 2024, and the fall fly in 2024. Yeah. So, yeah,
that's badass.
It's been a good run.
Okay. So, I like to start these off with a very, very simple question. Run me through your first memory in the outdoors to kind of give me like the chronological progression to when you started doing this at a pretty prestigious level.
I'd say the earliest memory was literally going to Kmart, buying a cheap fishing rod and reel. And when I was a kid, my mom, who we lived in Miami, she had a fashion business. Mm-hmm. So she would make deliveries to different houses. She had like people working under her. It's not like a sweatshop, but like, little old ladies working under her that would like, be like seamstresses. They'd like, trim this, do that, whatever. And so there'd be these lakes behind some of the houses. Mm-hmm. So while she's there conducting her business or whatever, I'd have her just give me 30 minutes to run around the back and go and, throw things like rooster tails or little rattle traps and stuff like that and go catch peacock bass. Yeah. So that was kind of one of my earliest memories when it comes to fishing. From then, it just kind of progressed. I've watched a lot of, Walker's Gate Chronicles. I watched a lot of Spanish Fly, Sportsman's Journal, Sportsman Adventures, all the popular fishing shows here. I grew up with them. I watched a lot of the bass shows, everything from Babe Winkleman to Bill Dance, and developed a, liking for bass fishing. So I did that too, everything from crawling plastic worms to throwing spinner baits. I actually learned how to use a bait caster before I learned how to use a spinning rod.
Yeah. That's interesting. You don't hear that often.
Yeah, I had an old Quantum Energy that was kind of a hand-me-down from my uncle. I backlashed the heck out of it. Luckily, it was mono back then, so it was easier to get out. But, I learned how to use that before I actually learned how to use a spinning rod.
Mm-hmm. And then from that point forward, how long more or less did it take you to kind of get into the fly game?
It's funny because, I picked up a spinning rod soon after, and I realized the effectiveness of bucktail jigs.
Okay.
Right. This is probably, I'd say 8th grade. Yeah, this is around 8th grade. Mm-hmm. And when I was in middle school. So I wanted to tie my own bucktail jigs. Mm-hmm. I wanted a specific color, a specific weight, this and that. I've always wanted to just tweak things, right? My first jig I tried to tie was literally me taking spider wire, taking a Hank Brown jig head, a bunch of feathers off a feather duster, and just like wrapping it on there and tying it on there. I'm like, oh, now I have a chartreuse and brown jig.
Yeah. This episode is made possible by our friends over at Gordy & Sons Outfitters, located in Houston, Texas, and employing a team of experienced outdoorsmen specializing in fly fishing, hunting, and wing shooting. Gordy & Sons is sure to prepare you for success in the outdoors. Next time you find yourself prepping for a weekend getaway or a bucket list trip, be sure to give them a shout.
So I wanted to learn how to do it proper, and I wanted to learn how to do it with different materials and this and that. So the Dade County Fair had a program who taught kids how to tie, and they still have this program going on now. It taught kids how to tie jigs and build rods.
No kidding.
So I took both the classes, learned how to build a spinning rod, and I learned how to tie flies. That's what they learned. That's what it was for tying flies. But, of course, that transitions well. Mm-hmm. So when I learned how to tie flies, I actually learned how to tie flies before I learned how to fly cast. So, do you
remember the fly that you learned how to tie?
It was a glass minnow.
Okay, sorry, continue. I just wanted to
simple glass minnow fly, right? Little bucktail, chenille, tinsel, mono for a body, paint on eyes, and then Clouser minnow, of course.
Of course.
So tied a bunch of those, learned how to do that. Didn't own a fly rod yet, but I did tie a bunch of jigs, caught, everything from peacocks to snook on these little jigs. And, so I went to Sports Authority, picked up a crappy fly rod. Things sucked. Okay. I tried to learn how to cast myself. Finally, after fumbling a bunch, I sort of figured it out. I mean, I may have whacked 3 or 4 cars on my back cast, fishing in the canals in Miami. Yeah. But I learned how to, I figured it out finally, and, enough to where I can catch a snook under a dock light. My family used to vacation over in Marco Island. Mm-hmm. So, of course, those little glass minnow flies are perfect bait fish imitations for doing that. So I caught my first few snook doing that. So on my birthday, one of my birthdays, my father actually gave me a choice. He said, because I was also taking an interest in dove hunting, duck hunting, I wanted a shotgun. Mm-hmm. So I was either going to choose between a Remington shotgun or an old Florida reel with a G. Loomis fly rod. And of course I chose a fly rod, chose the fly reel. And I remember that one really fondly because we actually purchased that not from a fly shop. We had a family friend who worked at a fishing store called El Capitan here in Miami. And, he had some connections and whatnot. So he kind of, gave us a good deal on it. So I got myself an old Florida number 55, and which old Florida is now Nautilus reels.
Oh, no kidding.
So, yeah. So the precursor to Nautilus reels was old Florida reels.
Is that the same company that made fly rods?
No, I don't know. They made fly rods.
I had an old Florida 2-piece 10 weight about a couple years back, but I don't know if that was like a different.
They might have outsourced the rod to be built by somebody and just put their label on it.
Okay.
I don't think they, rolled their own mandrels and, built the rods there. But they made the reels, and it was a simple cork drag reel, very similar to what an Able is nowadays. There was an incoming clicker, no outgoing clicker, silent outgoing drag. And, they're great reels. They're large arbor reels, because they had the number 5s, number 4s, number 3s, and then they had the 44s, the 55s. Those were all the large arbor reels. So it was the first large arbor reel. Okay. And so I paired that with a 2-piece G. Loomis GL3 fly rod, 9 weight, and a Cortland 40-44 9 weight fly line.
Wow. And then from that point, I'm also kind of curious to know what was the first fish you landed on that. Do you remember it?
First fish I landed on that was a dock light snook.
Oh, yeah. Okay.
Remember we got that, went on vacation to Marco Island, and literally from the dock, this isn't traditional fly fishing. I literally cane pulled the snook off the dock light. Right? I just flopped it in there, twitched the rod tip. He came out, ate the glass minnow, and I said, "Okay, I got a snook."
Sounds like today.
Yeah, it's like today.
Okay, and then how long did you think it took for you to start doing it well? I mean, it's like finding out or figuring out new species and stuff like that. I mean, it's no mystery that for me personally, anecdotally speaking, I think you are probably one of the most, if not the most well-rounded angler I've ever met. And I don't I mean that in the most honest sense and in the fashion I mean it. when did you essentially start getting good at targeting these other fish with a fly rod?
Well, I appreciate the kind words. Just growing up in South Florida, you were never really labeled as, oh, I'm just a fly fisherman, right? I'm fly or die, this and that. You just fished, right? You had the Met tournament. So people did, the different line classes, the fly records, this, that. But people just fished here. We spin fished, we plug fish, which is bait casting, and we fly fished, right? So it was never really I label myself as a fly fisherman or whatever. Like, okay, I own a fly rod and I fly fished, and this was fun. But I guess my parents purchased a boat when I was 14 or 15. I was like 14 years old.
So like a year and a half after you got your fly rod?
Yeah.
Okay.
It was a Hughes Light Tackle 18. It's a bigger boat. I learned how to pull with that and this really heavy moonlighter push pole.
Nice.
So, I got up on the flats, pulled. I learned what potholes were. And like my dream was to, let me work potholes with this fly. So, I caught snook in the pothole and stuff like that on fly. Of course, at some point, I also, I guess, went back to spin fishing more because it was just a more effective tool at that moment. Throwing jerk baits and whatnot, covering water. Because I wasn't really sight fishing yet, But to rewind even further,
yeah, please.
I kind of got into this whole thing with pulling a boat and whatnot through one of the instructors in that class that I took, the rod building and fly tying class. His name's Frank Perez, Captain Frank Perez at that time. He was a part-time guide. And that was my first backcountry guided fishing trip.
Okay.
Right. So I went with him and we caught snook, and I threw at every bonnet head shark I saw because I was like, this is kind of cool. And, I'm a 12-year-old kid catching bonnet heads and whatnot. Shortly after that, I also fished with another gentleman. His name's Doug Kimberly. He's actually a pretty renowned fly tyer here in South Florida. And he worked at this shop called the Fishing Line Bait and Tackle. I was one of the kids who was a regular there all the time. I bought a whole bunch of stuff there as well, right? So that fueled my spin fishing, fly fishing as well, plug cast, all that stuff. So Doug took me to the backcountry, caught my first baby tarpon on a bucktail jig.
Nice.
One he tied, by the way. And then we caught a redfish that day, and I forgot what else. May or may not caught a snook. Okay. Maybe a trout. But no, it was fun. The baby tarpon I can remember fondly. It was like pulled up to a moat next to an island, saw one roll, threw red bucktail jig in there, boom, got him. Okay. But through the years, between fishing with Frank, fished with Doug, it fueled my passion for fishing. And then we bought the boat, did a whole bunch of stuff with it, tried a technical fish with it. And of course, I definitely, eventually was able to pull that boat, catch tailing redfish and whatnot. My first tailing redfish caught on a gold spoon. Classic. And that just kind of fueled things from there on out. Moving forward, I, of course, went to college. And for some time, fishing was not my priority.
Got distracted like everybody
chasing
does.
Girls and having fun. Fast cars and drag racing and all.
Do you want to get a little bit into the drag racing stuff or no?
I mean,
I think it's kind of cool.
It's
your story.
Yeah, after high school, toward the end of high school, my father owned a tuning shop called Blitz Styling and Performance. Right, and it was basically you bought rims, you bought tires, you bought superchargers, this, that, exhausts, whatnot, headers. So all the kids came and souped up their cars and they went and bought that. So it kind of like drove me to want to do that for a little while. And I still fished, but I didn't fish as often. Yeah. Right. Coming out of high school. I got into drag racing after I bought a Mercedes, and I didn't buy it. I eventually, let me backtrack.
Please.
I had a SUV.
Nice.
And then I worked and saved, and I paid for, I had a hand-me-down SUV, and when I sold it, the money that I used for it eventually let me buy another SUV, and I sold that and bought a 4-door supercharged Mercedes called a C32 AMG. Right,
AMG. Okay,
Yeah.
that's crazy.
and to take it a step further, I did some work in the auto industry, and I was pseudo dealer for Rentec, whom they built some really fast Mercedes. And we did some things to that car, and it was really fast. It was a sleeper. I've got this
Sleeper build. I like how you
4-door
said that.
grocery getter Mercedes, with nice wheels and whatnot. And I'm out there drag racing for hundreds of dollars, and racing Mustangs and Vets and whatnot, and smoking them out off the line because that car just out of the whole shot was just insane.
Okay,
Between the suspension, the way it was tuned, it was just a whole shot machine.
that's so funny.
But anyways, after that whole ordeal where I almost got arrested and a whole bunch of stuff, thankfully I dodged a bullet. Yeah, one of the nights I was supposed to go to some drag race, I ended up going out on a date instead, right? Because chasing women came before chasing
Priorities for sure.
cars, before the fast cars. So I went on a date instead, and that night was the night in Okeechobee when they roped everybody.
Really?
They brought out the helicopters. They roped everybody.
Wow.
Yeah. So I dodged a bullet there. And kind of shortly after that, I said, you know what, this just isn't for me.
Yeah.
Right. It's just, I'm lucky I got away from this unscathed with a clean record. But I think I need to go back to something more wholesome and something that I still loved and want to dive deeper and love even more in this fishing.
Okay.
Right. So I still had that Hughes, right? Of course, it was at that point I didn't do very much technical fishing. I basically went out mackerel fishing and snapper fishing and this and that with it. But I had to kind of reinvest in that old passion with light tackle fishing, like, fly fishing and this and that. So I dusted off the old equipment.
What do you mean had to? Like, what was the reason why you had to reinvest?
I'd say it was all old stuff, right?
Oh,
Stuff was collecting dust.
Okay. Yes, I get what you mean now. Okay, yes.
So it was all collecting dust. It was old. It was neglected for years because I was, of course, went off to college, did this and that. So dusted off all the old equipment, spooled new lines, this, that, whatnot, and went shopping for a different boat. I sold that Hughes, and I went shopping for an actual poling skiff at that time. I came across a 17 HPX Maverick. It was actually a Redfish tour boat. It was owned by Chris Houston.
Redfish tour boat.
Yeah, Redfish tour.
Like tournaments.
FLW,
yes, okay.
IFA Redfish tour.
Yes.
So I had like the big Rapala wrap in the front and all that stuff. The whole 9 yards. But I had an F90 on there, so it was the right boat for what I wanted to do because I also wanted to cross big water. I wanted to be able to bonefish. I wanted to be able to do all that stuff with it, right? So I bought that boat. I had a trolling motor on it, and I don't know whose bright idea it was to 5200 the whole base of that trolling motor onto the deck. But as soon as we took that off, we ripped the deck out with it.
I bet.
So all the non-skid just came up with it. So I had a lot of things redone on that boat to turn it into an actual poling skiff with a casting platform, removable trolling motor, and whole 9 yards. And from then on, just, fishing with buddies, I just poled to every ends of the earth in Florida Bay, Biscayne Bay, Flamingo, Whitewater Bay, and just learned to fish from there. Fast forward another year or two through all the fishing that I did, I caught the attention of people at Maverick. I eventually ended up writing for the blog on their website.
No kidding.
And, I've always read the blog from one of my mentors, Tim Mahaffey, Tournament Tail blogs. And, I follow his success in all the different tournaments in the Keys. And one day I met Tim at the Swamp Guides Ball, and we talked, and he's like, we should go fishing. So we did. And eventually I learned a lot. He became a very important mentor in my life in fishing. And he one day suggested that, maybe I should think about guiding.
Okay, right? So he was the first person to tell you. You didn't come up with yourself like, hey, maybe I'm getting to the point where I should?
No, I didn't really think of it. It was Tim's suggestion, right?
Did they give you a reasoning for it?
I mean, I was fishing a lot. I had learned a lot, gained some success. I guess he saw potential in me, and I, had extra time because I worked part-time for the hospital, right? So I had a lot of extra time, and I had a lot of college debt. I needed to pay off that college debt.
Yeah.
So through taking some trips and guiding and whatnot, it was going to kind of be one of these things where let me test waters and see how it goes. Right. And of course it was a rough, bumpy start.
I was about to ask, how were those first years?
It's a learning process, right? It's a rough, bumpy start. You learn your way, you get yelled at a couple times, and you're respectful and you learn from it. And of course, having a mentor to guide you through that. Like if I were to show up to a spot and I went and fished it, right, where I think I was doing the right thing, and then someone told me, "Hey, what are you doing? That's not, get out of here," right? I'd at least have somebody to be able to call and analyze that whole situation with him.
Okay.
And have him clarify, hey, you were in the right or you were in the wrong.
Okay.
And I think that's important, right?
Would that happen? Did that happen a couple times or no?
I wouldn't say a lot. It happened a couple times, occasion. But it wasn't really, I kind of, when I was fishing an area, I kind of watched how things worked and just went back and just worked how I think it should work. And a lot of things I did just made sense, right? You figure out how the fish move throughout there in that pocket and or in that basin or whatever. And a lot of it's common sense, right? You're going to have 3 boats spaced apart where each boat's going to be able to get a shot at these fish when these fish are able to chill out between shots. So, you just do stuff that makes sense. And then some of it is just some of it are things that a mentor would teach you, right? They'll tell you why a certain thing works, a certain spot works a certain way.
Yeah.
So, yeah, through a lot of trial and error, a lot of observation, a lot of learning. When I finished work, when I got done with work, I worked part-time at the hospital. I would get out in the boat, go out and learn. If I was working the late shift, I would wake up early in the morning, go out and learn, come back early, go to work like a zombie. And then,
yeah.
I've met several people through that hospital system I work for that are involved in the fishing community, actually.
Oh, good.
And I worked at Homestead Hospital, and they were the original benefactor of the Herman Lucerne Backcountry Memorial. That's a popular tournament down here in South Florida, a multi-species tournament, and very prestigious. Right. So I eventually found myself on the tournament committee and, through the hospital. I was an employee of the hospital. I was also a tournament committee on that tournament committee.
But you weren't fishing it?
I fished it. I mean, the first year I was just a committee boat, right? They had to check in with me before they left. And then years following, I ended up fishing it. Eventually that tournament changed a lot. The hospital no longer became the benefactor. Other people have taken it over in the industry, and it's a different vibe nowadays. It's not good or bad. It's just different, right? It's a more of a Keys style tournament now, whereas back then was more of a local homestead, tournament with a bunch of, with all the Keys guys also involved and this and that. And it's, it doesn't feel like it's that anymore. I think with social media and promoting it through there's a lot of people who came into it from a different part of the world.
Yeah, I get you. Like almost like an invitational type.
Like
deal.
an invitational type of thing. But people came in and they fished it every year and whatnot. It's turned into something a little different now. Do I miss how it was? Yes, I do. Right. It was more of a, I guess everyone knew each other well. It wasn't social media. There was no social media then, or not much of it then. There were forums.
Too Cool Fishing.
Yeah, Too Cool Fishing, Florida Sportsman Forum, the Drake, which is, that was a train wreck in itself. And yeah, that was kind of the social media then. But like, you know, that tournament, no one really mentioned that tournament on the forums.
Okay.
Right. So the tournament was really comprised of a lot of locals, and then they also brought in celebrities and whatnot that would come and fish it as well. It was a different vibe.
Mm-hmm.
Today it's you know, it's run very well. It's run very professionally. It's out of the Keys.
Yeah.
But it's a different vibe, like I said.
Okay, so from being a committee boat and then fishing Herman Lucerne, all that stuff, when did you start getting into the other tournaments? I do definitely want to start talking a little bit about the Bonefish tournaments, and I'm also curious. I wanted to say this question, but I think I'll forget it. So, I'm curious as to when you started, what was your mindset every single day versus what is it now when you go out, when you go fish?
When I first started, the mindset was, I'm going to go out and catch fish.
Okay.
I want to go catch a fish. Mindset today is, I'm going to go out and pray that I come back unscathed. I just want to go out and have a good time. Let me go out and see what awaits me today. Right?
Okay.
What changes are there? You know, what fish are supposed to be there that are there that are not there. Why?
Mm-hmm.
You know, back then it was about catching fish. Today it's more about observing and learning. And then the back of my mind today is, okay, how am I going to take what I just saw and learned and apply it toward guiding? Apply it toward guiding my angler into catching a fish. How do I make this difficult sport easier?
You can't.
You can.
I know I'm joking.
You dumb
but
it
like,
down.
Yeah,
right?
yeah.
You learn how to pull a boat backwards real quickly when you don't, you know, when you have an angler that can't cast 20, 30 feet and then the fish is coming at you, the fly doesn't turn over, and like, all right, let me straighten this fly line out. So let me just pull the boat backwards, right?
Yeah.
So, you know, you do your best because it's about the experience, right?
Mm-hmm.
I mean, there's good anglers, there are anglers that are not as good. Right.
Mm-hmm.
They're
Beginner.
more beginners, and which is fine, which is cool. You know, the learning process and watching someone get excited over catching their first bonefish or whatever is more exciting than, you know, watching a good angler who has caught, you know, a lot of bonefish with me catch another one.
That's true. That is true.
But to go back, how I got into all this. I mean, yeah, I started guiding and I took a few years off because I was studying for an IT career.
Mm-hmm.
So I had to focus on that. Once I got done with that and got to where I wanted to in that IT career, which allowed me to have the time it takes to also be a guide, right? Some people did the firefighter / fishing guide bit. I did the IT guy / fishing guide bit, right? So to anybody bitching about this part-time guide, just to let you know, there was a lot of very good guides who are part-time guide firefighters. I'm just a part-time guide technology guy.
So I will say, it's funny. I had a similar conversation with Owen Gaylor at the time, right? And this is before I even knew you were a part-time guide. So I remember I recorded that conversation and I was telling, oh my God, like that episode went so well. And I even told you the part-time thing. And then you were like, hey, I hope you realize that I'm a part-timer also. And I was like, I'm so sorry, but it's funny because, you know, you look at it from different angles, different perspectives, and it makes a lot of sense, kind of the angle that you're taking. And I want you to kind of explain it. We've brought it up on the boat today about how, like, you don't find yourself becoming complacent or becoming like a habit or a creature of habit more so than trying to figure things out.
Correct. So, you know, I did take time off during the spring to guide full time, right? I still do now. And what happens sometimes is that you end up falling into routine because it works. But it works and it works and it works until it doesn't work anymore for whatever reason. And then you have to rethink it. Well, some people keep hammering away at it despite the fact that it doesn't work because it's, you know, it's just the easy thing to do, right? So you fall into routine. If you're fishing every day. Not everyone does it. There's definitely people who don't, but as a part-time guide, you can't fall into routine. You have to start the day fresh every day and figure out, okay, I just left the dock. This is happening. Tide's doing this. Wind's doing that. I know there's been fish in this zip code, but they might have blown out with all the grass there or whatever. So it keeps you on your toes. So you're just constantly thinking. I mean, if you're a part-time guide and you fall into routine, I don't think you'll make it.
Yeah.
Right. You can't keep doing the same thing over and over again and expect to always work. Things are always changing. Everything's constantly in flux. Right? This fishing's getting harder every single day. And the only way you're going to be successful in this is if you get your rate, I guess some people improve, right? Over time, over learning, over observing. If your rate of improvement is faster than the rate that the fishing's getting difficult, then you're successful.
Yes.
But if you fall behind, then, you've got some catching up to do.
And I'm sure you can pose the argument that a part-time guide who puts in as much effort and dedication to the craft, or a part-time guide who puts in effort to the degree that it's a professional degree of effort, would be better than a full-time guide who's just half-assing it, just riding on the coattails of someone else type deal, And so I completely agree with your point. So it's funny, like having to, essentially, I want to take back the argument that I'd presented in that episode with Owen, because I had never heard this side of the argument. So, but yeah, I think that that's a really important thing that I wanted us to say. And now that you brought it up, I would like to kind of mention, since when you had gone into the industry, do you remember some things about the industry the way it was that you kind of miss versus what it is now? Or would you, like, a better way to put it is, what are some of the changes that you've seen between when you first entered the industry versus now?
I mean, change is inevitable.
Well, yeah.
You can't do anything about that. And I gripe about it every now and then, but it is what it is, right? You got to live with it. I think the one thing I missed is the personal connection. I remember when I first started in the industry, of course, it was the beginning of social media, right? But not everybody was on it yet. And a lot of the people I met in this industry, fly fishing reps, fly shop owners, people who work for certain companies, bigger companies in the industry, I met through just going to trade shows. I met in person. I met through phone conversation. And it was more of a personal touch, right? Whereas now it's let me catch up and see what this person's doing by just looking at their social media.
Yeah.
And then also back then, people weren't judged by the clout that they've built on social media, right? So it was different. It was a different era. Now the era we've come to this era where social media is huge. It's big. And a lot of people are judged on that, whether you're going to get this deal or not. Oh, this person popular. Some of it's real, some of it's not, and there's certain avenues where you could really test whether you're really made of BS or really, a really good and fishy person.
Yeah. No, I mean, I completely agree. And the one thing that isn't around anymore are the stiffy girls, but that's a different conversation.
Oh, I missed that. I missed the shower. I used to go to the Shallow Water Expo, and that was the best thing ever. You see the, I'm going to bring it up.
Bring it, bro. I mean, Kevin Shaw brought it up. I mean, everyone, I hope everybody knows what they are.
I do miss that. Remember, I miss going to the Shallow Water Expo. I miss Stiffy having a booth there, and it had these beautiful women in these tank tops that said "Got a Stiffy."
Yes,
that was the best. that was the era that I started fishing at when I started learning how to light tackle fish. So the Shallow Water Expo was actually one of the first places that I received a proper fly casting instruction.
Really?
Yes.
From who?
Lefty Craig.
Okay.
Yeah. So Lefty and all the legends, they used to have they used to go to these events and sit at the booths And when they see someone messing around with a fly rod, they'd walk up and try to teach you how to do things proper, right? Of course, being self-taught, I developed a lot of bad habits.
Same here.
I don't think in one lesson that Lefty has helped me correct any of the bad habits. But, you know, that was kind of cool, right? You're a
Super
kid.
cool.
Look at your heroes, you know, growing up, teaching a fly cast. Or in another instant, what brings me back is that I remember one time I was driving back from Flamingo and I blew out a tire. Pulled over, put the spare tire on, got back on the road, blew another tire. Great. I don't have another spare. So I'm kind of on the side of the road. And we're at this section where there's no cell reception. I'm like, this is going to be a long walk or a hitchhike back. So I'm kind of looking at the situation, and then truck drives by, pulls over in the side. Gentleman walks out to help. Flip pallet. I'm like, wait a second. I used to watch your show when I was a kid. I idolized you. I idolized your show, what you did. And lo and behold, I borrowed a spare tire from Flip Pallet.
Yeah.
Wow,
that's so funny. Before I was going to start to transition into some of the Bonefish tournaments, but I would like to know, what is one of your favorite memories with Mahaffey on the boat?
Favorite memories with Mahaffey. One morning, we woke up. It was New Year's Day.
Okay.
I had gone out and did the whole fireworks thing. I was staying with my buddy Jeremy at his place in Key Largo. So, you know, Tim called me the night before. He's like, "You see the weather tomorrow?" I go, "Yeah." I'm looking at it. I'm like, "What are you doing?" He goes, "What are you doing?" I'm like, "Guess we're both doing the same thing, right?" New Year's Day, you know, after going out drinking, you know, fireworks party, whole 9 yards. We get out in the dark and run out there. We set up. It's slick calm, right?
Okay.
Like, all of Florida Bay was a lake. And then when the sun kind of just peaked, you hear bloop. Uh-oh. Bloop. Oh, another one. And that day, I think we went 3 for 7, but the bites that we got from these tarpon, these big, giant tarpon that were laid up, was just memorable.
Yeah, you want to describe them?
Excuse me?
You want to describe them?
I just head out of the water bites. You know, to eat it at the boat and you'd miss them. You know, because it was dirty, muddy water, right? But they were just very aggressive fish. And, you know, they'd float up close, and a lot of your shots are inside 20 feet, inside 30 feet.
Yeah.
And it was just, you know, this is how we started the year. It was great. We grabbed 3 giant fish, hooked 7, back before lunch.
Yeah, that's not a bad way to start the year.
Yeah. So that was one of the fond memories with Tim. Of course, another memory of mine was actually going out, and everyone's got a bad day, right?
Of course.
And here I am.
I had one 2 days ago.
Well, here I am fishing with the legend of Bonefish, the legendary Bonefish angler. And we show up this one place. It's one of the first times I fished with Tim. And, you know, this is 9 Mile Bank back in the day. And the bonefish were rumbling across. And for some reason, I couldn't hook a fish to save my life. I'd catch a jack after throwing into a school of fish. I'd lose a fish. I could not freaking hook one that day for some reason. It was horrible. I'm like, great. He's never fishing with me again.
I'm cooked.
You know, we went off and did other things that same day, hooked a big tarpon, caught some redfish, this and that. But like, still, I mean, I was like, man, can't believe I freaking failed bad. all these big groups of bonefish rumbling across the flat.
That's funny. That's funny. I wanted you to juxtapose that with winning your first bonefish tournament.
That was surreal.
Okay.
Right. So I did a lot of bone fishing, and, you know, 2 of my really close friends, Tony Yera and Jeremy Alderman. Jeremy was still guiding at that time. I just got back into guiding after, you know, taking a little hiatus to go to school for IT and this and that. And Jeremy had become a very accomplished fishing guide. So him and Tony went and fished the bonefish tournaments. And after a few years, they did well. They were the first angler and guide team to win both the spring and the fall fly in the same year.
Okay.
Right. And Jeremy decided to retire from guiding. He took over his father's business and just kind of retired from guiding. And then meanwhile, I'm still bone fishing. We're still fishing. And I'm still paying attention to bonefish tournaments. And I'm watching the results of every bonefish tournament. And I'm like, I could have went out and caught a couple weight fish this day. What the heck? How did everyone zero in this bonefish tournament this year? How was there only one weight fish caught this year? I'm like, I think I can do well. Or am I just kidding myself? So the only way to really prove your worth or prove what you think of yourself as a guide or bonefish guide is competition, right?
Of course.
Pit yourself against all the best bonefish guides and anglers and see who comes out on top. So after a couple years, a little bit of deliberation between whether or not they were going to allow Jeremy to fish as an angler because he had stopped guiding for a couple years already. I think there was some argument about, well, he should have quit for 5 years before we let him in.
Was it 4 years before when you guys fished?
Something like that. I don't know.
That's bullshit. I'm not gonna lie.
It was like a couple years that Jeremy had already quit guiding.
Yeah,
right.
Yeah.
So I remember Nathaniel Linville from the Angling Company. He spoke to Tyler at the Tyler Sheely is the tournament director, the bonefish tournaments, and Nathaniel basically said, "You know what? If Jeremy's no longer taking money for fishing, he's no longer guiding. Let him fish it."
Yeah.
Right. So awesome. We're in. We get to fish this tournament against all the best bonefish guides. We go out. It was I'm nervous as hell. Honestly, I mean, as confident as I was based on the pre-fishing that we had, I'm still nervous, dude. I'm fishing against all these guys. Some of them are my friends. Some of them are people I respect as guides. And maybe one or two that I don't respect for whatever reason. Yeah, so we go into this tournament, and on the first day, we catch 2 weight fish.
Okay.
No, sorry. We catch 3 weight fish on the first day. So we catch I forgot what it was. I think it was an 11, an 8, and then I know we caught a 7 because the 7 pound and up qualifies as a weight fish.
Wow. We
caught a 7 pounder, and we're like, this is the first day. We just caught 3 weights. We have 2 more days, and you're only allowed 3 weight fish in a tournament. So your cards are filled if you enter 3. We're like, you know what? Let's count the 7 pounder as a release.
Yeah.
Let's not weigh it in. So we took our 11 and we took our 8, that's what I think we had. And we counted those as our weights. And then we entered the 7 as a release because we had 2 more days to catch another big fish. Right. And when we came in, I was thinking we did pretty good. The fishing was good. Let's see what everyone else did. I'm expecting another wave,
like neck and neck, at least.
Yeah. I'm like, I think we're in a good standing, but let's see. And to my surprise, no one else caught a weight. Okay. I'm like, okay, I think we're onto something here. We're way ahead. I think we definitely raised a few eyebrows because there were definitely people that like who's this Honson Lau guy, right? He just came in. This is his first year fishing a bonefish tournament, whatever. And we came in and basically just whipped it out and said, "Here it go." I guess that's what we did. And one of the other competitors, one of the other guides called me and said, "Did you just count your 7 pounder as a release?" I'm like, "Yeah." He goes, he said something kind of vulgar, but basically you're like, "Yeah, you really showed everyone what the hell." So that was kind of funny. But the next 2 days, of course, every one of these tournaments, the weather's a struggle, right? The next 2 days were a struggle. I think we lost another couple the next day, and then the last day, we may have caught a release, I think, But when we went to one of our weight spots at the end of the day, and we're set up. We're like, all right, it's gonna happen. We're gonna get one shot, one weight. One of the other competitors decides to, he's running way offshore, and he decides to like run way tight in where I could see the white of his eyes.
Okay,
and
that's a little
like waked out my whole spot where any fish that would have been there is now gone. So, needless to say, I ripped him a new one after that. But anyways, it was it was surreal.
How did
we
it feel
came back
winning? Yeah.
and like basically everyone said that that's it. No one else caught a weight.
Really?
I was like, what? Because after the first day, I texted, at the end of the day after we got back, I texted Tim Mahaffey. And I said, oh, this is how we did. Because he asked us, right?
Mm-hmm.
He's like, just go to the bar. You're done. I go, what? No way. We got more to do.
Shots on me.
We got more to do. Come on. I can't sit comfortably here.
Yeah.
So, yeah, that was a surreal experience, dude.
Mm-hmm. I imagine that might rival catching your biggest bonefish.
It does. And it blows that away. I mean,
Really?
3 years before, 4 years before we won this tournament, went out and caught my biggest bonefish. The same day we caught a 12 and a 14 pounder.
Which is absurd.
Done by 9:40. Went red fishing and snook fishing after that. Caught a bunch of reds, caught some snook. It was a pretty great day.
Yeah.
Yeah. But as fun as that was, winning the bonefish tournament was definitely one of the highlights of my life. I mean, my mentor won this.
Mm-hmm.
Friends have won this tournament. Some really close and some of my best friends have won this tournament.
Mm-hmm.
So to be able to share that space and that trophy with them, it's an honor.
Yeah. Was that your favorite tournament favorite one that you've won because it was your first?
I'd say it holds a special place in my heart.
Hell yeah.
Fall fly, and the fall fly has always been known for like just really big fish. I mean, back in the day, there were just some giants, 13s and whatnot in the fall. And this day and age, they're fewer. There's a lot fewer of those around.
Yeah.
But back in the day, Tim Mahaffey would come in with, 2 fish over 13 pounds, and then later on, another big fish and a bunch of release, and you're like, wow.
That is crazy.
The fall was definitely known for a lot of big bonefish.
Who are some peers that you have nowadays that you like to bounce ideas back on or back and forth with, or people that you like maybe not look up to, but like enjoy sharing the process with or your progress with?
Yeah, I mean there's definitely several guides I'm close with.
Mm-hmm.
Several of my peers that I'm close with, and we bounce ideas back and forth with each other. One of which is really the last old school OG fishing guide in Biscayne Bay. It's Carl Ball.
Mm-hmm.
Me and Carl are pretty close friends. And we bounce ideas back and forth to each other when it comes to fishing, but there's also a lot of life things we talk about.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah.
Yeah. So, yeah. And then, a couple other guides down in, 2 guides in Isla Mirada that I'll share information with.
Mm-hmm.
And one other guide here in the Bay that I, share some information with, and kind of keep that circle tight.
Yeah, you should.
Because, you can't overshare.
For sure.
The fishery's getting tougher. There's, zip codes are getting smaller,
mm-hmm.
and there's more and more skiffs on the water. So, sometimes you have to keep those circles a little tighter.
To kind of capitalize on, having such a good run in tournaments and all this other stuff. I do want to shout out the fact that you just got, or you just found out that you got confirmed for the length record on a bonefish for what tippet?
That was, we caught that fish on 14-pound tippet,
mm-hmm.
but it didn't matter because the tippets don't matter in the.
I didn't know how length worked. I thought it was all like length per tippet. Okay.
Yeah, so it's the length of the fish, right?
Mm-hmm.
Because you can't harvest bonefish now. So like to bring one in to weigh it, bring a big fish in to weigh it, it could cause a lot of harm to that fish. So that's A, it's illegal, and B, it's frowned upon,
mm-hmm.
right? So what IGFA has done is they made a length record. So now when you catch a big bonefish, I didn't know that was a response. Okay. Yeah. So now when you catch a big, a bonefish of a certain size, there's an official ruler from the IGFA that you put the fish on to measure it. And then, you get videos, you get pictures. You have to make sure the fish was released healthy. you send them your whole leader and the fly and all that stuff to validate. So recently we caught a 13.4 during the spring fly. And because in these bonefish tournaments, we're using the same ruler, we basically went through the same motions as you would if you were to enter a record. So we had done that for that 13.4, and looking at what was on, what were the records then, we're like, yeah, this one blows everyone away. Let's enter it. Why not?
That's so cool.
Why
That's
not?
so damn cool. Do you remember the length on it? Well, we talked about it today on the car ride over. It was like 28, something, 27.
I mean, centimeters was like 73 or something like that. 73 centimeters, I think. 72, 73.
That's absurd.
That was a big fish. I mean, definitely fish over 13 pounds.
Yeah.
Giant.
When you're not bone fishing, what's your next like pinnacle species?
Tarpon.
They're gonna say snook. I don't know why.
Snook are fun.
Yeah.
I love snook when they're available.
Yeah.
But through how things are constantly in flux in the Everglades and whatnot, snook fishing may not always be fun. There are some years when there's more sight fishing for snook, and there's some years where it's mainly blind casting for snook, right? But when you can actually sight cast snook, like what we did today, where snook are laid up like tarpon.
Yeah, that morning was like essentially shooting fish in a barrel. It was pretty cool. It was really cool, actually. Yeah.
Watching the bite in the snook when they charge a fly.
10 foot from the boat.
Yeah, that's cool. So when the snook is laid up and does all those things, it's a lot of fun and whatnot. And they're fun too when you blind cast them in a pothole or an edge or something like that. But being able to sight fish a snook is a lot of fun. It's up there, but it's not always readily available.
Yeah,
that's the thing.
Okay, so tarpon. Run me through a little bit of your tarpon fishery, tarpon, like not strategies, but like your tarpon stories.
Tarpon stories. Tarpon season 2 years ago. My three Jumanji experiences.
Okay, see, I was gonna go into that one next. Okay, you beat me to it.
Yeah, so that was an interesting year. It was like 2 years ago, tarpon season, and all these experiences come in threes, right? So we go out. I think the first experience I had two of my anglers from Texas, and we tarpon fished a couple days, and I think it was just really cold, right? We had that cold front come through, and it wasn't that good. So we decided to go bonefish instead. And we're down by Key Largo, we're bone fishing, and we had a couple shots, some big fish, and then I hear a drone above me. I'm like, who the heck is flying a drone over my head right now? Right? What asshole is flying a drone over my head? And I look up and I'm like, those aren't drones. It was a giant swarm of bees descending on us, and they literally landed all over the boat. I told my guys, I said, listen, guys, don't move. Don't swat at them. Do not crush one. Do not kill one. Do not move. Just freeze.
Just let them be.
It's all you can do, right? Because I remember one of my other buddies, Rick the Paiva, that happened to him and his client, were a bunch of bees that landed on his client's shirt. And it was one of those button-up, fishing shirts. And they had to slowly unbutton the shirt and kind of like get the motor started, throw the shirt out, and then run, get out of there, right? So, so I'm thinking back at that the whole time, and it was 10 minutes of sheer terror when I had my right arm covered in bees, the whole motor, the pole and platform. I think there were a couple that may or may not have landed on my anglers. I think they were mainly backed by me. And fun fact, I'm allergic to bee stings.
Oh, there it is. You didn't mention that earlier.
Yeah. So 10 minutes of sheer terror later, they finally all left. And I was relieved. Right? Okay. So that was Jumanji experience number one. Number two came a month later.
The sequel.
I was fishing with another angler of mine who fishes me every year. Another one from Texas. And we go out and we catch we're tarpon fishing, and we're in the Everglades. And I think we just released one we just released like a 70 pounder, right? I'm leaning over the gunnel of the boat. I let this thing go. I'm like, awesome, great. And my angler's like, oh my God, yells. I go, what? I look up in front of me. I'm still leaning over the side of the gunnel. I look up in front of me and I see this thing about 2.5 feet in front of me. And I'm thinking, oh, stupid manatee just came up to sniff me, right? Nope. It had reptilian eyes.
Okay.
It stared straight into my soul. It was a giant, like 10, 11-foot crocodile. It just stared into my soul and said, I could have bit your head off, but I'm not.
I chose not to.
Chose not to today. And yeah, that was a scary experience.
All right.
Jumanji experience
third.
2. On to the third. It was I was fishing the Don Holly tarpon tournament, and I was with my angler from Texas.
Okay, what a coincidence.
A coincidence, right? And so it was probably I think it was second morning, running back to the Everglades from Isla Mirada, and we're crossing this area called Middle Ground.
Okay.
On the way up the coast, because we're running way up the coast, all the way up to Lake Lossman's. And on the way there, I had a tarpon free, by Middle Ground, I had a tarpon free jump and almost hit the side of the boat. I'm like, I look to the side, I go, that was a close one.
Yeah.
All right, whatever. Didn't think much of it because I've had those close calls before. But on our way back, we ran the same route on our way back. And as we were running back, this one tarpon jumps, nearly misses the side of my head, bounces off my poling platform and back in the water. I go, shit, I almost died. I almost just died.
Silver torpedo to the face.
Yeah. So there's my 3 experiences, couple tarpon seasons ago.
What do you think makes an exceptional bonefish angler?
Exceptional bonefish anglers knowing how to read a fish and how to feed a fish, right? Okay. You don't have to be the best caster. You just have to know where and when to put the fly, how to move the fly. Because that shot is on big bonefish, right? Small bonefish, whatever. You throw a fly in front of them, they dog pile on it, you're tight, boom, off to the races. But big bonefish, there's a certain way to feed those fish. And every fish is fed differently. You have to read their face, literally, to see how you want to feed that fish. And while you're taking your shot at that fish, that shot can change in a matter of milliseconds, depending on that fish's attitude. So you constantly have to change. Like as a guide, I can tell you, throw it there. Throw it 3 feet left of that fish. But as you're false casting, that shot can change in an instant. And then sometimes my angler have thrown there and it's like, oh, what happened? I go, shot change. Sorry.
Yeah.
Don't listen to me. But yeah, they do the bonefish thing. They don't always follow the course that you said they would. They're not always swimming into the tide. Sometimes they swim sideways. Sometimes they swim down tide. They exhibit different attitudes, especially the big ones. Sometimes they become weary, even though they don't spook. It's almost like they know something's up. And some of those fish can still be fed, but many of those fish, you just let them go. Let them chill out, and you'll feed them maybe an hour later. But if you throw over the heads, you're done. You're done that day.
Yeah, I made that mistake.
That happens, right? Everyone gets excited. It's big when you're staring down,
8-pound
double-digit bonefish, a weight fish. You're like, man, knowing that there's fewer of these fish that exist, it's an incredible fish. And but bonefish are honest fish, right? If you do everything right, you're always gonna get bit. But what is right is it has very little room for error. Okay. That's, with the bigger fish.
That makes common sense. Yeah.
So, you can luck into it. And some people have lucked into catching big fish by, having blind cast, just throw your fly out. I've done it. Threw my, started the day, stripped out line, threw my fly out to strip the line back in the stripping bucket, came tight to a weight fish. I just blind casted a weight fish.
Yeah. One of the things that I really liked that you had mentioned earlier, and I was like asking you about this because like you had mentioned to me that you spend a lot of time with like more beginner clients and stuff like that and whatnot. And when I've heard other guides mention it, it's almost like there's a little bit of frustration in their voice and their tonality when they say like, oh man, like whatever, newer guys that can't throw or whatever. It didn't seem like you felt that way. And then you gave me a really good reason why. And I would like for you to go into that.
Yeah, I think what changed my perspective on that, or kind of opened my eyes, was I remember one year at one of the BTT symposiums, Dustin Huff mentioned, I'll keep my good anglers and my mediocre anglers, because my mediocre anglers would give the fish a break, right? So that's one of the things that stuck with me. And I kept thinking further into it. I'm like, you know what? We're here for this experience. And well, yeah, if you go out with really good anglers all the time and you catch a lot of fish and you put it all up on social media, it makes you look good, right? And I did that quite a bit in the beginning. I've since kind of toned down on that, because I don't think I need to do that anymore. I don't want to expose a lot of the fishing that I do, you know, in real time. I'm not trying to give a fishing report. And you know, you start to also value when a beginner angler starts to learn in their beginning steps and become successful. Like I said, going back, you know, I'm more excited when one of my newer anglers learns how to double haul and then catches a bonefish. You know, one of the first or second bonefish.
Do you want to give a shout out to like one of your clients that you were thinking of right now? I think that'd be kind of funny. I don't think I've ever asked anybody to do that.
Another Texan client.
Ah, there it is.
Dave. Yeah. David Herbeck. When he first stepped on my boat several years ago, you know, I don't think he had taken a fly casting lesson then, and it was just, you know, he was very beginner, right? And over the years, you know, sent him home with homework, and he's taken classes. He's fished with other guides in Texas, and he's developed his fly cast better and better, and improves every year, right? And you could see it. This year we caught a weight fish. You know, last year we caught, I think it was last year, we caught him his first bonefish on fly. And it's great. It's a great feeling. And of course this year catching a weight fish, you know.
No, I didn't do that, so
you know, and you know, other than that, you know, the cool thing also, and something I really enjoy when I have clients that you know are just open to doing what's right for the situation, right? Because sometimes fly fishing, you know, if you're trying to go out and just have a good time and have fun, you're not trying to accomplish something where like, oh, I'm a fly angler and I'm trying to accomplish this accolade. I'm here on vacation. I want to have a good time. The situation doesn't always call for fly fishing being the most effective or least frustrating method of catching fish. Sometimes you just have fun, right? So pick up a spinning rod with a jig. And that might be the best, you know, the best tool for that particular scenario to not frustrate yourself. So, you know, we kind of did that, you know, low light and whatnot this year with Dave, and we caught a 30-pound permit on a yellow jig. You know,
we take those. That's awesome.
And I've caught plenty of nice fish on jigs, and sometimes jig fishing is more fun than fly fishing. I'll be honest with you. But
yeah, no, I don't disagree at all. You know, it's funny. I'm walking away from the last 2 days, especially like, you know, the conversations that we had while we fished today and stuff. And I'm extremely inspired to try to become a better, well-rounded angler. So like, I have never really told the story of how you and I really become friends, but you and I became friends on Instagram over just like DMing silly shit. And it wasn't until 2022 where I couldn't really find any solid resources on how to build a good tarpon rod. And for my mom anyways. And so I reached out to you, and I didn't really expect you to answer. It's like, this guy's, you know, he's big, he's doing his own thing, like he doesn't need to give me time, whatever. And you actually helped me a lot in how to build the right setup and do everything right and stuff like that. And that was the first time that I had, you know, started to, okay, like I can do this with a spinning rod. It doesn't always have to be fly. It's more so the fish versus the style of fishing. Because at the end of the day, it's all high level anyways. And so I think, and obviously I'll finish the story of how like all this stuff. So then after that, a year later, you had helped me out a little bit with that trout pimp fly that I talk about a lot. And I've given you credit for that as well. You and Tim O'Brien. Yeah. And then obviously, well, now we're here. But one of the things that I remember thinking of is like, man, this guy is known for fly fishing. Why is he so big into the bait casting and spinning and stuff like that? I was still too naive in the whole fly or die.
yeah, I mean, like I said, I grew up here in South Florida where it's like you just fished,
Yeah.
right? You weren't, snobby fly fisherman. You weren't a spin guy or whatever. You just fish, dude. I love plug fishing, love spin fishing, love fly fishing, and I like doing it all. And of course, you also, when you become a guide, a majority of your clients, especially when you start, are going to be spin anglers. So of course you have to think of ways to like excel your game in spin fishing. Like, I've taken what I've learned in fly tying, applied it to some of tying jigs.
Which is, I really want to get into that too. Like that's so cool. But yeah, continue.
And not just tying jigs, but like something as simple as a weed guard, right? Some of my clients are beginners and they have trouble setting the hook. So, using a Texas rig style lure, you have to really set the hook hard. Some people have trouble doing that. So I figured, all right, now how do I fish an exposed hook where they don't have to set the hook so hard, but not have to worry about all the grass here in the Everglades, on the grass flats? I'll just tie a weed guard. So I just took jig heads, for all my Z-Man lures, tied a weed guard on the jig heads. Voila. You have a weedless lure that has incredible hookup ratio. Right?
Yeah.
So again, you just, clamped in on my Regal and just tied it up. But a lot of the fishing crosses over, same thing with bass fishing and snook fishing, throwing plugs, throwing this, throwing that. There's a crossover between all of those.
I almost kind of want to imagine the fishing, conventional spin, fly, kind of like a fork in the road that goes three ways. And the higher level that you get, they all start to sort of come back and meld together. Do you agree with that statement? Yeah,
because you obsess over one thing, right? You start to learn how to fly fish. Now you want to just catch everything on a fly rod. You obsess over it. So you just take that road and you're just beating yourself over the head again and again and again. And sometimes that helps you get good.
Yeah.
But when you get to this point where you're like, all right, I've caught a good amount of fish on fly and I've become pretty proficient at this thing. And I'm just out here to have fun. You start to go back into, all right, I'm going to pick up a spinning rod, do this. Pick up a plug rod and do that. It's bait caster.
Yeah.
It's all about having fun at that point, right? Because one of my things that I've always said was that I don't think people should, not that I don't think, but like, I don't think it's such a good idea for people to pick up fly fishing
first
until they're tired of catching fish. Because, like people have asked me, hey, why don't you teach your girlfriend how to fly fish?
Okay.
She's a very accomplished spin angler. She's caught a lot of good fish with me. But she's still at the level where she wants to catch fish, right? And fly fishing adds a level of frustration because you start learning this thing where you're going to have to fail a lot.
Yeah, you learn how to cast bass backwards, basically.
Exactly. You're going to fail a lot before you become proficient at it. So until somebody gets to that point where they're like, I can give away this shot or that shot. If I blow a shot, screw it. I don't care. Until you get to that point, fly fishing will frustrate you. And I don't, like in my case with my girlfriend, I don't want this to be a horrible experience for her.
Yeah.
Right. So, when the time comes and she's caught enough fish on a spinning rod and she's like, all right, I'm okay with losing a few shots or missing a few fish. Then we'll start to learn how to fly fish if she's interested,
Yeah. So, okay, I want to ask one more question. I do want to end it out because I want to end it out after that, just because we've had a very, very long day, and I can see we're both really tired. Right?
Talk for hours still, but yeah, there's a lot.
Well, I'm open to going off of something. What I'll do is I'm gonna ask this question, and then from there I'll ask you something that you want to talk about, maybe a topic you want to go into, and we'll continue, and then we'll close it out. We mentioned that again, Mahaffey, you're a mentor. Have you at any point considered taking up someone else and being someone else's mentor?
I have mentored several people. There's a young fishing guide named Bryce Gabriel. down in Islamorada. He's a good friend of mine as well. And, you know, I've mentored him. And I've mentored several other people. There's been people I've tried to mentor that I've backed up, you know, I've backed out of because they've exhibited signs of, you know, narcissism, stuff like that, that I'm like, all right, I don't need that. But definitely, I think it's important to mentor the right people.
Okay.
Right. Because you don't want some shithead to have a bunch of knowledge that you've given them and they'll go run wild and not do good things with it. You want to do it for somebody who's appreciative, who's respectful, who's contributes positive to the sport.
Yeah, that's happened like a handful of times in South Padre, and it's kind of screwed up the fishery a little bit.
Yeah.
Okay. So I wanted to ask that because I was just kind of curious. With that being said, instead of ending it out, give me some topics you want to kind of go over.
To go over politics?
No, absolutely not.
You know, turning the freaking frogs gay. No, we won't dive into politics. We don't need a bunch of people triggered.
I only have like 5 listeners. Come on. No, but all jokes aside, like some things that I haven't gone over that you're passionate about that you want to talk about, like some of the bass fishing stuff, like you said, the industry things that kind of upset you. Like, and the floor is yours, man.
Politics?
I'm kidding. God damn it.
All right, we won't dive into that. But you know, there's a lot of things we can talk about, right? And we've covered a lot, and everything from, you know, me catching shit for being a part-time guide,
which is unfair in and of itself, but it's frustrating because like you look at it from an outsider's perspective, someone like me, and it made sense. The argument made sense. Got full-time. That's the better way to do it. Nah, I don't. I think that's bullshit. I think I see 100% what you mean, and not to mention I've met some of the most amazing part-time guides also, like throughout ever since that episode and throughout that, and so I mean I completely rescinded what I meant when I said it. So I do think that that's a very shitty take on anybody else's part.
Yeah, and you know, I have all the respect for the hustle, all the respect in the world, you know, for the full-time guides. And whenever I have a trip I can't take, I'm usually sending that trip to another full-time guide. But at the same time, you know, someone who has proven themselves, and somebody who's fishy and isn't an asshole, should also demand the same respect, right? You can't label that person, oh, they're a part-time guide, whatever. That's right. I'm going to write them off.
Yeah, it's a cheap cop out, is what it is. It's a cop out. I don't have to compete with him. He's a part-time guide.
Look at the you know, not just the Bonefish tournament, right? Won 3 Bonefish tournaments in a row.
5 piece this year.
4 Pete this year if I win. If I win.
I'm joking.
But look at the you know, the highest level that you can achieve in the sport of fly fishing for tarpon.
Okay.
The Gold Cup. You know, Captain Louis Cortez.
Okay.
You know, a friend of mine. He won it 3 times in a row. Right? Firefighter guide.
Really? Yeah, part-time firefighter. Yeah, fuck yeah.
Yeah. So you can't judge someone that because they decide they have a career path to be able to make a better living for themselves while still being able to guide and take people fishing and still enjoy this sport for yourself. Because one of the things I've found with some of my buddies who have started to guide full-time is that they've worked themselves to death. Where they're on their off day, they don't want to go fishing. I want to go fishing on my off day. I want to go fishing, duck hunting. I want to get out there.
I can see it. Yeah, like a little segue is not segue, a little blurb, I guess. Today, when you saw all those snook under the mangrove, like you were like, I'll test your skill, whatever. I'm like, I got it. I did not have it. I could not fit a loop within like a 4-foot radius or 3-foot radius. But then I was like, man, you get up there, you do it. And you were like, don't tell me it was a good time. And you actually like went and did it. Like it's cool to see someone that's actually like runs off the platform versus, oh, fine, let me hobble down type shit. So that was really cool. And it's
fun.
Yes. No, I see it. But continue. I didn't want to interrupt too much.
No, you're not interrupting anything. I'm just saying, like, it's just, you know, you can get burned out guiding full time. Again, I respect the hustle. and I respect the full-time guides 100%, right? But if I was full-time, I'd probably be burned out too.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm fortunate to be in a position where I can guide as much as I want to, be selective with clients, because I've definitely had clients that I've had to, ask them to start booking someone else because I can't jive on the boat with them. And we can go into nightmare stories, but
Please do, man. I mean, look, the floor is yours.
fun,
I've wanted to
right?
do this for so damn long. You can run with this. Go for it.
All right. So I'm sure whoever I'm talking about is gonna listen to this. And if you're pissed, fuck off. I don't care. Honestly, that is my take on it. I really don't give a damn.
Okay.
But I had to fire a client. Guess the last one I fired. And I hate using the word fired, but I literally had to, right?
Uh-huh.
Literally, it was strike 3, right? Because one of the first times I took him fishing, we hooked a Grand Slam. He lost a tarpon, but he caught a permanent bonefish. And we get back to the dock, and great day. I fished an extra 2 hours to try to get your Grand Slam. 0 tip. Like, all right, whatever. I don't expect a tip, but it's nice when you've put in so much work.
For sure.
Right. I'm coming home late to my family. I'm cleaning the boat, this and that. And, it's appreciated when you put in the extra effort. But pat in the back. All right, cool. Next time he tries to book a trip, he sends me a deposit. And the day before the trip, I call him and said, hey, the weather's looking horrible tomorrow. It's, I'm like, we can catch a fish, but it isn't going to be sight fishing. You're going to have to soak a shrimp on the bottom. It's going to be really horrible weather. It's going to be raining, drizzling on us all day, no sunlight, a little bit chilly, but not impossible. He's all right, let's go. As we idle out the dock, it's raining on us. He asks me again, can we sight fish today? No, we can't. Sorry. I don't think there's going to be a break in, sometimes there's that break in the weather and then you can do it. But I just looked at the radar, looked at the forecast. It's not going to happen. Right. And if it happens, it's a miracle. He's like, all right, let's just turn back. All right. Turn back.
Already here. Okay. Yeah. Okay.
Whatever. I'll turn back. No. As I'm turning back, idling back in, the next day is Thanksgiving, dude. And he goes, hey, what are you doing tomorrow? I'm like, it's Thanksgiving, but I'm not doing anything during the day, right? I've got Thanksgiving dinner, but I'm not the one cooking the turkey this year. He goes, oh, why don't we put that deposit toward tomorrow? I was like, dude, you maybe drag my ass out here, idle out here in this rain getting poured on.
Yeah, this is the deposit right here. Yeah, I get it.
And you're asking me to use the deposit for another day of fishing tomorrow? No, I'm sorry. I'm busy tomorrow.
Yeah.
I just became busy.
I'm going to air fry this turkey.
Yeah. So it was strike 2. And strike 3 came, of course, he booked me on a day after Thanksgiving. I still honored that year's deposit for that trip. And literally, we spoke the night before. I just had Thanksgiving dinner with my family. I had some left over. I was just going to take that on the boat for my lunch. So I really didn't have anything to make a sandwich or anything else because I was going to travel the next days after that, right? Toward the end of that week. So I didn't want to have a bunch of food sitting there rotting. And he asked me about lunch. I said, oh, there's a Wawa on the way to the boat ramp. You could stop there and just pick up a sandwich. They make some pretty good stuff. Right? He goes, oh no, I want you to make me lunch. I'm like, dude, I have nothing.
The hell?
I go, I have absolutely nothing here. I literally took some leftovers from a family dinner and that's all I'm eating on the boat tomorrow. Right? Oh, and he goes, well, I want you to make me a sandwich. Because I made him a sandwich the year before, or the 2 years before when we fished, right?
So, okay.
Yeah, made him like a Chinese sweet pork sandwich thing that was badass. But he was like, oh, I want you to make me a sandwich. I go, dude, honestly, I have nothing at the house. I'm like, I can't make you a sandwich. I can buy you one. No, I want you to make it. I'm like, all right, dude.
Seems like a power trip at this point.
I don't know what the hell was his issue was. He was staying at a bathhouse or something. I don't know what the hell he was staying at. He was like, I have no refrigeration here. I'm like, I don't care, dude. So I'm like, what do you want to do? I'm like, I can't make you anything. He goes, oh, then maybe I should find another guide. I'm like, you know what? That's a good idea. I think you should find another guide. And on top of that, don't call me anymore.
Yeah. Yeah.
You don't disrespect me, dude.
Yeah.
You know, you don't disrespect your fishing guide like that, dude.
Not at all. Yeah.
We're not your butlers.
I know that sounds kind of absurd. I'm not gonna lie. It's like you're paying for someone's knowledge and expertise, and obviously like being out there, and they're saying, yeah, put in extra time, make me a sandwich. Fuck that.
No way, dude. No. So, yeah, I think that was my latest nightmare story. Hopefully, I don't have any more of that. But you know, being part time now, it's easy to be more selective with your clients that you know you can have a funner time with on the boat. And I'm not talking about being selective where, you know, I require a client that can cast 60 plus feet in one false cast. You know, no, just someone cool, someone who appreciates this sport and this fishery as much as I do, someone that can jive with me on the boat. We may not agree politically or this or that, but at least we have a good time on the boat. And that's cool. And I have clients and friends who are on both sides of the political aisle. And there are things we can talk about. There are things we know we can't. But at the end of the day, we're there for a common reason, a common cause, and they're having a good time, dude.
To catch Goliath grouper, yes.
Catch Goliath grouper, yeah. But you know, the common ground, you know, is something we should all focus on, not trying to find something to divide on.
Okay, so mentioning this, what other things would you think kind of grind your gears, or things that you're not a fan of in modern day, this industry, or anything else that you want to kind of get off your chest?
Well, I'm not a fan of when a company, when a bigger fishing company who should know better, goes and promotes somebody who's doing things that are questionable.
Oh, right? I like where this is going. Okay.
Yeah. You know, let's just say I'm okay with throwing a cast net and drifting pilchards out there. I'm not too snobby about doing that. But there's definitely companies out there who are endorsing and I don't know if they're financially endorsing, but they're endorsing through, I guess, through resharing their posts,
social media and stuff,
through social media, through support, right? People who are trespassing, doing dumb things like that, and you know, it's bad for the fishing industry. You know, when someone puts out a fishing video, arguing with a security guard who's just doing their job, saying, "Dude, you can't fish here. I'm sorry, I'm doing my job."
Yeah,
and they put out a fishing video, a video on YouTube, arguing with the guy or trolling the guy, right? I mean, that's why there's more and more places right now that are getting shut down from fishing. They're not allowing people in. There's no trespassing signs everywhere. You know, that's one of the reasons why. And I don't know, it just makes fishermen look bad. You know, you don't want to give the PETA anti-fishing guy more ammunition against you, right? So you don't go out publicly and do these stupid things to make other fishermen look bad.
Yeah, okay. See, I like that. Yeah.
Because at the end of it, we're all fishermen. We're all just out here to have a good time and try to catch fish. But we all don't want to fuel people that want to prevent us from doing these things. And you give people like that, these anti-sportsmen, you know, fuel to use against us when you do things like that, in my opinion.
I like that. What do you think could be the death of the fly fishing or fishing industry, modern fishing industry?
Death of it? It's always going to keep going.
You think so?
You know, the way it is now, it's just going to change. It's not going to die. It's going to change.
Okay, the death of the fishing industry that you've come to know and love.
Oh, it's dead. It's gone. That thing's buried.
That's the most nihilistic thing you've said in the last 3 days.
It's no longer what it used to be. I mean, parts of it are. I mean, I sit here with friends and we reminisce about, you know, what we did back in the day or how things were and this and that. And, you know, it's like some of the generation before me talking about the good old days. You know, we'll never see, or, you know, I don't think in my lifetime I'm ever going to see, you know, a good amount of giant bonefish in Isla Morada anymore. You know, that age is come and gone. You know, it changes, man. And again, going back to it, where the only way you're going to survive and be successful is to better yourself at a faster rate than that change.
Yeah, no, and we've already mentioned that too, which I completely agree. One of the things that you and I have mentioned a little bit, not a little, we talk about this a lot. One of the biggest frustrations is the elitism in modern day fly fishing.
Yeah, I mean, again, I grew up here in South Florida. We just fished, right? The whole elitism, I kind of get it, but I don't. You see, you look highly on yourself because you've accomplished this thing, fly fishing, and some people think that's better than everything, better than everything.
Oh,
else,
I was referring to like companies more
companies,
so. Yes,
okay,
we already went over that part. Yeah.
You can cut that piece out.
It's gonna stay in there,
but yeah, the elitism. I mean, I mean, there's definitely it's very cliquey. The fly fishing industry is definitely very cliquey, dude.
Was it like that when you joined?
I don't think I saw it. Honestly, I don't think I saw it.
Do you think you were still on the outside looking in when you first entered the industry, so you didn't see it?
Maybe I didn't see it. But then again, when I was in high school, I wasn't the guy that only hung out with one group.
That's also fair.
I knew everybody.
Yeah.
I got along with everybody, whether you're a nerd or a jock or this or that, goth, this, what. I just got along with everybody.
Anything wrong with goth?
Yep, nothing wrong with goth. Not at all. But no, I mean, I guess maybe I didn't notice it. I didn't notice the clickiness in the beginning, but maybe now that I've dove deeper, I've noticed it here. But there's definitely, within marketing, it's very different. When you're working with a fishing company and you're working with their marketing department versus working with like the actual people who run the show in the back, the product development, the business side of the whole deal. It is very different. There's working with marketing folks is at times frustrating,
nightmarish,
right? Because their marketing strategy may not align with your morals, which I've had conflict of morals when it comes to certain, having been asked to do certain things in the fishing industry, and I've always been out front about, dude, I'm not doing that.
Yeah,
no, and some people won't hold the moral high ground. Some people just give in because I'm getting free shit.
Yeah, no, literally.
Right. But you are who you are. You do what you want to do, and it is what it is. But just know that like people are looking, people are watching, and people are noticing what you're doing.
I agree. I've had more conversations with people from other like companies that I've like that may be working with some of those guys, and kind of like mention it to me. And it's like, okay, like at least it goes seen. I can't even see the marketing strategy behind it, because I see that, like, for example, and I'll give a shout out to Sabine on this one. Sabine doing the Sabine stories. I think that's amazing. At no point are they going for their main guys. They haven't even done a story on Owen Gaylor yet. And so like they're one of their number one guys, but they do stories on not the normal people, like just people who buy, the clients, the people who are part of the Sabine family. I have nothing but respect for that. And I think that's where you could kind of get back some of the camaraderie throughout the industry, is not always glorifying the same few people like through and through, and actually giving more credit where credit is due to people who may not be quote unquote the full-time guide. Better way to put it.
Yeah. I mean, there's two strategies to marketing, right? And I think they both work, because you have your grassroots guys still, and those are the guys, I guess behind Brian's brainchild, the Sabine stories, and basically, he's telling story for the unsung hero, right?
Quite literally.
And of course, there are the superstars in the industry. There are people who are just born to be a superstar in the industry, right? They may or may not have accomplished anything or changed anything in the fishing industry, or made any impact except for just being famous for being famous, since they're a Kardashian, right? Not to hate on that or anything, man. If you've hustled your way into becoming successful, all the power to you, right? Great. Everyone finds their own way to become successful. But again, there are people who notice. I'm just saying. People are watching, people are noticing, people are talking, and people are always going to talk, right?
Yeah.
People hate on me for whatever reason. Fuck them. I don't care. Right. But yeah, you have to think that there's a lot of people on the outside looking in who are not in the fishing industry, who are not, who are not neck deep into the gossip and this and that. Who are just looking at, that's a cool video from this famous person.
Yeah.
Right. Who's famous in the fly fishing industry. They don't know why he's famous, but they know he's famous. Right. And then you got that guy. That guy's got money and he's going to go buy whatever is being advertised, right? A fishing reel, a boat, glass of water, whatever they're advertising. Right. And that's why that person's endorsement is worth what it's worth to that company.
What I don't understand is, or I guess the question I have is it might be a chicken or the egg question, but I don't know if I find the single person who made like this Kardashian style of individual. I don't know if that person is more not rough on the industry versus the marketing guy who just got out of college, never been in the fishing industry, gets picked up by a big company, and then is just doing what he's been taught in college for the company, and in end result ends up missing all of the grassroots style of like hard grinding. For example, you mentioned to me that there was a guy that you had met in marketing who didn't even know who Andy Mill was.
Yeah.
And it was like, how? You sure? Like, come on.
Yeah. I mean, that's where we're at today. I mean, at the end of the day, it's all about the Benjamins.
Yeah.
If that person's marketing strategy is making that company money, all the power to them. But, this coming from a grassroots sport that's kind of become pseudo mainstream nowadays, you shed a tear when you see that. You're like, oh, damn, really? This guy who's running marketing for this company can't recognize, some of the people who built this industry who have had a big impact. But yet, YouTube Joe with his videos catching fish in sewers is really important. It's somehow more, and maybe it works. Maybe that works. Think about it. A lot of kids nowadays are used to watching Jackass style videos.
Yeah.
And maybe that's what's driving sales, for certain products. But if you're selling a high end product and you're glorifying people like that, right? I don't think it's going to help your marketing.
Yeah. I mean, we had this conversation on the way out of the park today where I was telling you, like, man, like it sucks that the F70 is so heavy and like no one's gonna make a lighter F90. And then you mentioned what you had told me, and then you were like, well, it's because the F70 and F90 is such a niche market, really just controlled by pontoon boats. And it was like, even me, someone who I think is, I don't want to say I'm well versed in the industry, but I had no idea. I was like, how can they not think of us and whatever? So I was like pigeonholing myself in this think tank that I was creating for myself. I don't know. I feel like I felt a little silly. I'm not gonna lie.
I mean, as much as, and that's where, meeting different people and learning different things is really cool.
Yeah.
Right. There's a lot of things that I haven't learned yet. And I might meet somebody, hang out with somebody who's gonna teach me a thing or two. Right. I don't claim to know everything. I know quite a bit of what I know, but there's still a lot in this world I don't know. And, again, going back to F90, F70 thing, dude, I learned this because I cried my ass off to Yamaha about it. And someone at Yamaha told me what the deal was. The pontoon industry is what's driving you guys. I mean, you think about it, even though light tackle fishing has gone kind of mainstream, it's also still a drop in the bucket compared to the bass industry, the billfish industry, even the ice fishing industry. We're smaller than ice fishing, believe it or not. We're a drop in the bucket. So for a company like, Yamaha to prioritize, I'm going to build a light F90 for a technical pulling skiff, that's a far cry. I mean, I hope somebody over there says, I'm going to give these guys, I'm going to throw these guys a bone.
Yeah.
Right. But I highly doubt it. After all these years, they still make a great motor.
Mm-hmm.
I've got a 115 Yamaha on mine. It's a great motor, but I don't think we can expect a lot of these outboard motor companies to really just cater to skiffs.
Mm-hmm.
Like I said, the pontoon market drives that.
On a personal level, I've asked this to a couple of rod builders and shop guys, but since you yourself build rods, do you think that we've reached a pinnacle in rod technology?
As far as fly rods go?
Every rods.
No.
Really?
No, I mean, let's take bass industry, for example, right?
Okay.
Bass fishing. The perfect chatterbait rod is a fiberglass rod. You want that, moderate action rod that bends further down. A, you lose fewer fish with it, and B, you could, work chatterbait better, spinnerbait better with that. You can always make that lighter. They've done it over the years. Maybe it's a slower graphite that's still super light, or a lighter fiberglass rod. So no, we haven't reached that pinnacle yet. There's still room to go there. As far as fly rods go, one can say with a lot of many modern fly rods, they've taken a step backwards through the years.
Right? I like that you said that. Yeah.
Because one of the best casting fly rods that I still own a few of them in 9-weight, 8-weight, 7-weight configuration are the G Loomis GLX Classic 2-piece rods. Right, those are the best casting rods ever made. And it feels like a lot of rods that have come out since have just been rods built around power casters, right? People who need to overline the rods with a very heavy fly line and then a super fast rod just to kind of, just a lumberjack out there. And generally that's a lot of the majority of your fly casters nowadays, at least that I've seen, right? So I think the industry kind of took a step in that direction with a lot of the newer rods that were built. But I think now we've come to this point where people are recognizing what a proper cast is, what line feel feels like.
You really think that?
I think so.
I like that you said that. I would have never guessed that, but I'm glad you see that.
Yeah, I see that because the progression that I've seen with some of these rods, you pick up something like a Scott Meridian, a Sector right now, and you can see what an improvement that rod is over some of the rods that were just previously released by a lot of the other companies. Like this rod has line feel, this rod is fast. It's made for a true grain weight line, and it gives you hope that people are actually gravitating toward actual fly casting skill.
Yeah, it's funny. Right. The first time I met Toy already, but the first time I'd given Rick, I'd put a Maven rod in Rick's hands, which I'm not supporting Maven at all. I'm not the biggest fan of the way they kind of do their guide relations, but the blanks they use, CTS blanks. Oh my God. I have never thrown a rod that has so much feel like a CTS blank. And so I remember the first time I gave that rod to Rick, he threw a shot at it like a 110. And he looked at me, he goes, Andres, what is this rod? This is one of the greatest rods I've ever thrown. And it was one of those things where you see a guy like Rick who's used to throwing who's throwing 7-weight GLXs with 5-weight line in competition. The Masta's 5-weight, which was a secret until they started announcing it and stuff. And he's seen the progression of rod speed increase. And all of a sudden you give a slower rod and he's like, I can feel it. This feels great. I know it. So I agree 100% what you just said. I think that there was almost went like too fast, too furious, literally too fast, too furious, too fast rods, tapers that are too furious, too aggressive. And all of a sudden people are like, yo, slow down a bit. Let's walk it back. Let's do the finessing. Let's get better in the technicals. So I do think that now that we're talking about it, I am thinking about it. I do agree that you kind of mentioned that there is a push towards the skill level increasing in the field versus getting it out there and da-da.
Yeah, because it's almost like in the last few years, it feels like another river runs through it, where a lot of people have gravitated toward fly fishing, and you develop the bad habits, and to try to overcome these bad habits or to work with these bad habits, you just put a heavy line on a fast rod and chuck and duck.
Yeah.
Whereas once you start fishing and getting into these real life situations where you're in front of fish, and you start learning, you start to recognize, what a really good fly cast is, what a good rod is. So your demand changes, right? It goes from, I need this chuck and duck to I need this casting tool. And of course you meet other people who show you what a real casting tool is, and they show you, okay, this is the cast, just slow your cast down. Oh, look what you did. People learn over time, and I think we just had a lot of people that migrated into fly fishing all at once in a short amount of time, that didn't know better, that are now learning what proper is.
Yeah. Again, I completely agree. That kind of gives me a little bit of hope. It's funny. I've spent a couple conversations, like some of the, maybe 10 episodes ago, I consistently found myself, or 20 episodes, when I was doing a lot of the stuff with Shannon Tompkins and Rob Sawyer, talking about the history of Galveston being such a great tarpon fishery, snook fishery, being destroyed or whatever. It would always end on a note with damn, I feel bad about the future. But it seems like, having this conversation, and granted, I'm speaking in just this minutia of the whole industry, I feel like there is a little bit of hope for upcoming anglers and stuff like that. It is hard to find instruction though on those kind of things.
There's too much information.
Exactly.
That's the problem. It's there are people who, I get it, right? You want to bring people into the industry to help keep the industry going. You want people to spend money, and when they spend money, then you fund your research and your product development and this and that. You're able to continue as a business. But, my argument to that is we should now, we've brought a lot of people into the industry. We should now start looking at bringing quality people into this industry and not just a bunch of shitbags, right? Because there's definitely been a few in this industry that I've considered wow, you are a detriment to this industry. You have done nothing good for the morale of this industry, and you've really turned the sport into another episode of Jackass.
Yeah, and I think it's almost like if, and I'm not coming at it from a whole everyone needs to be in the spotlight, because I think that there are people who deserve to have a spotlight more than others based on how hard they work and stuff like that. We talked about, the grind is kind of essentially settles everything out at the end. But I do think that as this, for example, new incoming guys, stuff like that, guys who really want to do this, it is a little demoralizing seeing people who you may know or know of that get too much credit for things that they either didn't do or show face just the right time, and get credit for things that it was hold on, why would I want to be a part of that industry? And I feel like I've had this conversation a couple times before on this podcast, but it's something I do feel really passionate about. It's hard for me to just kind of just laugh about it and move on, because part of me really wants to, part of me just wants to, all right, whatever, we all understand what's going on. But I do think it's a conversation that needs to be had, where if the new upcoming guys aren't as motivated to truly work hard and figure out the fishery and perform, versus instead, prioritizing their marketing and their social media, you're just creating nothing but a spoof. You're creating nothing but smoke and mirrors.
Yeah, I mean, I agree. And I think it all comes down to guidance. We should try to guide people in the right direction, right? Teach them what right and wrong is. Teach them what quality versus garbage is. I think that's what it is. You have to target the audience, because the audience is, the audience, they're the consumer. They're the ones who are buying the product. They're the ones who are driving the industry. So if you teach the audience, what is quality versus what is shit, then you have an audience that demands better quality people, better quality products. and you have less shit.
Yeah, but therein lies the conundrum. Someone who's new in the industry sees someone running, really, really nice rods and reels and whatever. Like, well, he must be that guy. I'd be like him. And then therein the Ouroboros begins. So it's like
They'll learn.
Chicken or the egg. It's basically the way this conversation goes.
They'll learn. Everyone may come in sideways, with no knowledge, idolizing the wrong person, but eventually, a lot of people, once they get into this, they start to learn, right?
Okay.
They start to see things in a new light, in a different light. And if you have a voice, right? If you have any sort of influence whatsoever in this industry, I think it's your responsibility to drive it in the direction that you feel is the best for, I'd say, the community.
Yeah. Even though it may not be your own personal gain. Yeah.
Yeah, it may not be your personal gain. I mean, there are definitely people who won't do anything in this industry unless it has personal gain attached to it. And then there's people who are just want to see good in the fishery, in the industry, in the sport, amongst their friends. They want the sport to grow into something nice when they want to teach their kids how to, to get into it. But then there are some people that won't do anything without, a degree of personal gain attached to it.
Yeah, I'll tell this last story, and then I want to end this on a little bit of a lighter note because I really do enjoy the conversation we had. So we're almost at the hour 45. I think we'll easily cross the 2-hour mark.
Joe Rogan podcast.
No, I've done. This is the 1, 2, 3, the fourth one I think over 2 hours. Unfortunately, the one with Rick was only 45 minutes.
Dang.
But I want to do a part 2. Anyways, what I was getting at was, I literally had on the tip of my tongue. Oh, okay. So to end this on a little bit of a fonder note, or not fonder note, to end this on a little bit lighter note, I would like you to kind of run me through some of your own personal fond fishing stories, either by yourself or, like things that you look back on with like true, like, damn, like I did that, or stuff like that. It doesn't have to be you with one of your mentors, with one of your buddies. Even it could be you by yourself, etc.
I think what was done in the last 3 tarpon tournaments right now sticks in my head. That I'm still blown away by it.
Tarpon?
Sorry, bonefish.
Okay, yeah.
Sorry. I think what was done in the last 3 bonefish tournaments I still can't believe it.
Okay, well,
it's still surreal to me.
Oh, sorry. Run me through tournament 2 and 3 since we went over 1. Let's just relive those 2 and then we'll start to close it out.
Yeah. Second one we fished was a spring fly. And again, I'm going into it nervous, right? I'm like, shit, I'm defending champ.
I have to carry this the pressure,
I have to keep this thing going. And I'll tell a funny story about that too, if you don't mind.
Please do.
Deeper into this.
Yes.
But so, day 1, we go out, we fish, and we catch 2 weight fish. They weren't double digit fish. There was a 9 and an 8 or something like that, right? We're like, all right, we're sitting on top again. We got 2 weights on board. Day 1, great. Again, I text him. And he's like, go to the bar. You're done.
Shots on me.
Yeah. It's funny. Day 2, this is a cool story, and I don't mean to tell the story in any sort of spite or malice. It's just something funny that happened, and all parties involved, we're all friendly now. Everything is cool. But the second morning of the tournament, before we leave the dock, Jeremy and I get into an altercation with one of the other competitors. And I won't dig into it, but at the very end of that conversation or argument or debate, whatever you want to call it, Jeremy ends it with, you know what? Fuck it. Let's go catch a 12-pounder and smoke these motherfuckers. Right? This is day 2 of the spring fly. Right? And I don't think those guys knew we had already, that we were the team that had the 2 weights caught already. But anyways, we go out that day. We come back. We didn't catch a 12-pounder. We caught a 13-pounder. So yeah, that made it. And of course, day 3 of Tim's like, why are you even fishing? It's like raining, it's downpouring. Like, I'm just gonna send it. I don't care. We're going. We went out, torrential downpour, and we hooked another fish and lost it. By some miracle. But we didn't need it anyways. But we won the spring, and that was cool.
Okay.
And with a big score. And that 13 pounder we caught ended up being entered into the IGFA length record and
new record
got approved. I was at the banquet last night at the auction for IGFA, and I just found out. I didn't know it was approved. I know it was entered, but I talked to a friend of mine, Adrian from IGFA, and asked him, hey, what's going on with this one? So he goes and talks to the person who does all the record keeping, and he's like, oh no, it's been approved since November. I go, oh, awesome.
Never sent him the certificate.
No, it takes a while to get the certificate.
It takes a couple months.
But yeah, so I'm sure it's in the mail, and I'm sure Jeremy's gonna get his certificate soon. But yeah, I mean, then after the spring, where I'm like, there's no way we're doing a 3-peat, dude. I'm going into this, but at this point, we've done a lot of damage to our fishing spots.
That is true. Yeah.
A lot of people have already seen generally where we're fishing. They may or may not know where we're actually catching our fish or when or how, but they now have an idea about where we've been fishing in all the different zones. So people have been at this point already creeping in all these different zones. A lot of the other guides, and I'm not giving them shit for that. I'm actually applauding the different guides for putting in their time and trying to figure it out.
Okay.
Right. I want to compete against the best. Right. I want people to do their research. I want people to be the best, and I want to compete against those. But I also want to compete against people who are morally and ethically, they're doing these things morally and ethically.
Yeah, but you can argue that they go practice that spot later on. It's not like they've took you off the spot type. So yeah, I see where you're coming from.
Yeah,
yes,
exactly. So anyways, I'm going into this. I'm like, man, this guy, that he just put a couple pictures of some whitefish on Instagram, and I kind of recognize what that is. Like, dang, why is he in there? So I see another guy with, another whitefish. I'm like, man,
it's getting tough.
They're starting to pick apart some of this stuff. So I'm getting a little more nervous, right? I'm like, at one point I'm excited at the same time, because I'm like, all right, the stakes are higher. The competition's gone up, great, but we've got to improve. What are we going to do? I told Jeremy, I'm like, dude, whatever we do, practice fishing in the 2 or 3 days that we actually practiced for that tournament. I'm like, we have to take our fishing to a different level. We can't rely on what we did in the last 2 tournaments. We can't, rely on those spots. We can't rely on those fish. We have to just think, what else can we do to secure whitefish? And it was a tougher tournament because for some reason lately, I've really seen a large decline in double-digit bonefish in Biscayne Bay. I think within the last year, there's been a large decline.
Any particular reason, or just
I don't know, they're leaving or they're aging out. Maybe they're sitting offshore of the reef somewhere because they don't like being bothered. Who knows? But I've seen fewer fish. They're less reliable too. They should be here or there, but they may not always be here or there. They're here or there with less frequency now than they were a year ago, 2 years ago. I mean, in 2020, that was a year where there were a lot of bonefish tailing. A lot of tailing fish. Maybe the pandemic keeping people off the water gave them a break, so they started tailing again.
It happened everywhere, man.
Right?
Some of the fishing we saw in Texas, you could actually catch fish in guts in Texas again during COVID. It was unbelievable.
It's crazy. And then, fishing pressure got heavy again. Instagram gave away a lot of fisheries, and people weren't careful with it, and it just blew up. And people who showed up in some of these spots and caught some of these big fish were, I guess, not doing it ethically. Right. I mean, there were people dragging chum bags and this and that. And I think think chumming in certain spots will ruin a spot, and these people didn't know better or didn't care and just chum the shit out of these fish and kind of ruined some spots. And after all that bullshit happened, in the last few years, every year the fish tail less and less and less, unfortunately, right? But if you look at it though, in the last couple years, there hasn't been a lot of big fish being posted on Instagram like there were before, because it's changed. It's not as easy anymore. It's gotten harder, you know. Anyways, going back to the fall fly this year, I was like, all right, competition's greater, stakes are higher. Let's do this, right? So we figured a few things out that worked to our benefit.
Okay.
And we caught a 7 and a 9, right? We caught 2 weights. You know, this time I wasn't an asshole. I did not enter the 7 as a release. I kept it as weight, right? We debated a little bit, but we're like, yeah, no, let's stay reliable.
Yeah.
So we entered those 2 fish, and then we caught, you know, a handful of releases as well. One of the other teams did catch a big fish. I'm not going to dive into how that happened, but, you know, I had a conversation with that individual about what happened there. Anyways, so yeah, the stakes were higher, but we you know, our score won. We won 3 bonefish tournaments in a row. I was like, wow.
Man, yeah, you know, it's funny. It's funny. How do you add pressure to yourself going into the spring? Well, having this conversation is you're adding pressure right now. Just talking about it, I think it's kind of funny.
Oh, so. I mean, again, and in one respect, I am, you know,
like you want to prove it, and I get it. Yeah,
yeah. You know, I'm excited because of the competition. But when I'm fishing now, it's like I'm always watching my back.
Yeah,
and I'm always like, who's watching? Can I even fish here today because there's too many skiffs around? You know, it kind of sucks, to be honest. You know, so at some point we're gonna have to stop fishing the tournaments and giving away our shit.
Yeah.
I have to go back to being just a guy pulling around and nobody knows my boat.
Paint the motor, do everything else.
Do something. Who knows? So then I can stop watching my back because I can just be like everybody else. Which originally I got a white boat because of that, right? I got a white flats boat because like everyone else has a white flats boat. Yeah, but somehow mine's somewhat recognizable. There's
115 show.
Yeah, I mean that and the step platform, stuff like that. Yeah. I mean, there's a few doppelgangers out there. I have one client who built the boat exactly like mine, so he runs around out there somewhere. Sometimes I get a call from a buddy like, "Hey, what are you doing there?" I'm like, "I'm at home, dude."
That's funny. Well, yeah. I mean, I'm glad we talked those 2. So the way I like to end these, 2 questions. Well, first thing, is there anything else you want to kind of go over? Anything else you wanted to have said?
I think we've
covered a lot. We've covered a lot,
quite a bit,
and I'm glad we did. I'm glad that you were just gung ho about it. Like that was perfect. With that being said, the last 2 questions I always ask is, looking back at everything that you've done throughout your career, which is quite a career, I would say, anyways.
Short. Just
say what you want.
A lot to accomplish.
I understand that, but I think you should give yourself credit where credit is due. Not only that, but like again, there's a lot of things that I didn't know about you, even though we've been friends for quite a few years, that we've learned in the last 2 days. That okay. Anyways, is there anything you wish that you would have done differently? Anything you wish you could have not done, or maybe things that we wanted to excel in that you'd never got a chance to?
I wish I had started fishing at this level sooner. You know, the phase I went through with all the car bullshit. I wish I had fished instead, or fished more at this technical level instead of, you know, kind of wasting my time with that crap. That's my only regret, really. You know, other than that, there's, you know, everything you do in your life, every mistake you've made has led you to where you're at today. And I may or may not be who I am today without having made mistakes, without having, you know, done great things, done good things, done bad things, without, you know, just living the life that I've lived.
What are some mistakes that you've made, and maybe you can meet the fishing industry, that you have learned the most from?
Mistakes I've learned the most from, well, I remember fishing with Scott Deal, who's the previous owner of Maverick Boat Company, and I remember fishing with him, and he advised me one day, you need to slow down. I was pulling really fast through a lot of different zones, covering a lot of water, like speed pulling almost. And he'd blow a fish out here, blow a fish out there. Like he's like, dude, you need to slow down. So ever since then, I have slowed down, and it's eye opening because when you slow down, you see so much more that you would have missed. So yeah, I mean, there you go. That's one of the things.
I want you to tell a story about you fishing with the president of Shimano. That was so funny. Not having a translator.
Oh, dude, we had a shot. We had this permit that was sitting on the edge of a bank, right? I'm like, all right, got a permit. He's got a crab. Like 12 o'clock. 40 feet, 12 o'clock. You see the permit? Yes, permit. I'm like, all right. We have a language barrier. He could speak some English, but it's not perfect. So we didn't have a translator or nothing. It was just like we're just winging it. So earlier in the day, we had caught a bunch of redfish just like casting on shorelines, and the dude's like precise, right under the trees, this and that, throwing soft plastics in there, catching redfish and snook. But then we went permit fishing, and there's this permit sitting like 40, 50 feet in front of the boat, just hovering current. Boat stopped, and I'm like, throw the crab right in front of that permit, 12 o'clock, 40 feet. And he lobs that crab 100 feet. I'm like, reel. And he's like working the crab like he's slow crawling a plastic worm on the bottom. And I didn't know what to say to make him. Like it was hard. I couldn't explain to him to skate that crab on the surface and get it in front of that permit, let it drop, right? So yeah, that was the language barrier is sometimes is frustrating, but that was a lot of fun.
I thought that was funny. I thought that story was unique. Okay, last question I like to ask is, I think this is really important, especially after everything we've talked about. A piece of advice that you would give the incoming generation, either, people who just want to excel at this in a private setting, excel at it in a guiding setting, or even just be part of the industry. What would you kind of say?
That's a loaded question.
It's supposed to be a loaded question.
If I had to say something, if I had to give a bit of advice, is
you want to keep it short.
Be humble. Yeah. Don't forget where you came from. Don't be a cocky asshole when you've gained a little bit of success. Just be humble and don't forget where you came from. Don't forget the people who got you where you got. Don't forget the people who who helped you along the way. And don't forget who you were before and who you are now and how you've learned and grown. Just don't forget where you came from.
It's kind of seems like it should be commonplace for someone who spends so much time with new people, showing them new things, that they should be secure in who they are as a person. But it does seem like in this industry, some people want to just forget about who they were and be, I'm the latest and the greatest and yada, yada, yada. And it kind of taints the image of the fishery.
Oh, it's like you're building an avatar, right? Quite
literally.
Your online personnel, your profile, who you are, that is who you make it out to be. Some people have a shaded past that they don't want out in public. And then, some people don't come from a crazy good origin story. And they're embarrassed about it. Like, I didn't come from a fishing family. My parents never technical fished. They fish for snappers and stuff for food. But I'm not ashamed of it.
Yeah.
You don't have to come from a fishing family. You don't have to have some crazy origin story about how you got into fishing. You just fell into it. You just got into it. And it's great. Enjoy the journey.
Yeah, no, you said that. For example, you and I fished with my mom today, and like she got to find out some of the stories of her dad and how she got into fishing. But it's funny because my mom has fished with me for so long, and you watch her fish, and she still doesn't know how to act when she sees a fish. And it's funny. It's so funny because like, you know, it's like sometimes I get frustrated, like, Mom, like we've done this so many times. Like, how do you still, you know, whatever. Yeah. And it's cool because like most people, or not most people, I'd like to say that if I was someone who really cared about my image and wanted to I want to be the best and whatever and da-da-da. Okay. Then maybe I wouldn't show my mom fishing. But at the end of the day, that's like, that's my dog. Like we fish all the time. Like I don't care that, like, you know what I mean? Like, and again, it's funny because like she got into the hand lining and stuff when she was younger. So it was never like I was the first person in my family to take it semi-technical. And after seeing you fish, I realized I am not technical. No, I mean, in casting, different. Maybe distance, sure. But the minutia, I realize there's a lot of stuff I need to work on now. Dude,
I'll say this. Florida, you know, being successful in Florida in fishing really teaches you to excel in everything else. Because this is the big leagues of technical fishing is Florida.
That's why I love fishing here.
Yeah, it's great. You know, I love my Texans coming here.
Well, good, man. Man, with that being said, we're at 2 hours and 5 minutes. Bro, this has been an amazing weekend. I know we had been trying to plan this for a while. A bunch of stuff got in the way. I'm really glad we finally got it done. This podcast wasn't even supposed to like really happen. It was more of like, oh, like let's just screw around, like let's do it.
Yeah, just talk some shit.
Yeah,
hang out.
Yeah, and I knew we'd get along, but like I didn't know we'd get along this well. Like I'm really glad that we made this happen, and I look forward to doing it again. Hopefully, eventually, sooner than later. But yeah, with that being said, man, it's an honor to have you be a part of this project. It's an honor that you've been on the behind the scenes. Like I remember when I was working on the book, I would send you stuff and see what you thought, how you liked it, and stuff like that with the alligator gar concept film that never really got off the ground. And also you've helped me a little bit trying to get my name out with some companies. So you never had to do that. And I think that one of the reasons why I'm so fond of people who are generous or honest or just real is because of the conversations that you and I have had. So I gotta thank you for that. But yeah, I mean, I guess there's not much else that we need to talk about.
Well, the honor's mine for being able to sit here and have this conversation. It was fun.
Hell yeah, brother. All right, well, let's get out of here.
All right, cool. See ya.